Hello and welcome to episode 493 of Fergo and the Freak. I'm that bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRLP. And join me as always is the glorious LeagueFreak. You can also find on Twitter at LeagueFreak. How you going there, mate?
I'm going very well, Andrew, the real deal Ferguson. How are you?
Oh, man, not too bad. I got punching out some numbers during the weekend, which was been a long time since I did that.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it's amazing how cranky people get over stats and facts.
Yeah, when you put in place a set of really, really relaxed rules. I mean, you were very complimentary to many of the teams, especially at the lower end of the list, right? Yeah. And it was a big list, and so it's not like you had these harsh exclusionary rules in place that got rid of some teams that were surprising. You basically let everyone have a chance to be able to claim a dynasty of some sort.
That's right. So, yeah, I put together a list of the 33 most successful dynasties, and I had a rule, and that had to be 4 consecutive seasons of finishing in the top 4 at the end of the regular season, and had to have appeared in at least one grand final. Mm-hmm. Right. I know people are going to say it's a bit weird, or why haven't they had to have success in there? And it's because there's a few reasons, okay? In the first decade or so, we had the first past the post rule in place. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you get a team that was maybe just a draw away from being the premier that year. And because of that, then there was no finals in place. They finished 1 point behind the team that was the premier. And that team that was premier might have gone on and not finished in the top 4 the next year. But this other team that was one draw away was consistently like second or third for 4 or 5 years in a row.
Yeah.
And so I think a dynasty needs to be much more than winning a premiership. It needs to be sustained, consistent success in the regular season and in the finals. And so I was trying to treat both sides of that equally, which I know you can have arguments either way, but for what I was doing, my rule, and this is going to sound like a real prick thing, but my rule is the rule that I run by. That's the rule that you all have to just live with. If you don't like it, do your own fucking list.
Yeah, I get it. I think that the way we just talked about this before. For me, a dynasty is you got to win 3 straight. That's it, right? And that's okay that our ideas of dynasty are different. For me, your list is more of you had to get through this team to be the best, right?
Yeah.
And they're right. And I think if you rank them in that context, it's a fucking amazing list, right? But if you want to call them a dynasty, you can call them whatever you want, Andrew, because you're allowed to do whatever the fuck you want because you're the best stats person in the game. My stats guy.
Your stats guy.
Stats guy, everyone.
That's what I'm doing here. So, look, I put together a whole list. And the way I had it is I basically just gave every team a rank from 1 to 33 for all of these different sectors, okay? So the regular season win percentage, average for, average against, same for final, same for the total. The length of the dynasty as far as seasons, not games. Mm-hmm. That way the teams that played just 4 seasons in the current game weren't being promoted up the list higher than a team that might have been at the top for 9.5 or 10 seasons or whatever in the early days when there was less games being played. Mm-hmm. Number of titles won in that dynasty, number of times they were runners up, which means number of times they made it to the final 2 or got to the grand final, so and so. And there was only 33. Should we go through them? I can just go quick. Just name them quick.
Let's go through the top. Let's get through to 10. Let's go through to 10 quickly because then it gets spicy.
Yep. Okay. 33rd West 47 to 52. 32nd was the Dragons 39 to 44. 31st Glebe 1918 to 22. 30th was St George 27 to 31. 29th Balmain 36 to 39. 28th St George 46 to 49. 27th West 56 to 63. That was the millionaires. 26th Manly 2011 to 14. 25th the Bulldogs 1936 to 42. 24th Parramatta 76 to 79. 23rd Newtown 1910 to 15. 22nd Balmain 1941 to 50. That was one of the longer dynasties in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was only 5 that went for more than 10, that went for 10 seasons or more, and that was one of them. 21st, Newtown, 43 to 48. 20th was the Roosters, 2017 to 20. 19th, the Bulldogs, 83 to 86. 18th, the Magpies, 29 to 32. 17th, Canberra, 87 to 91. 16th, Manly, 68 to 78. 15th, Brisbane, 95 to 98. 14th, the Roosters, 1908 to 14, the Daily Messenger one. 13th, South, 49 to 57. 12th, the Roosters, 74 to 77. 11th, Melbourne, 2006 to 09. I put that one in there, even though all their titles in there were stripped.
Yeah. I guess it's Go on, sorry.
I was going to say, I kind of wanted to have a bit of a marker in there to show you, how impressive that side was, but also how even when you get to cheat, you still couldn't make the top 10.
Yeah. And I was going to say exactly. It's a really good marker because people, I think that anybody that's been watching the game the last 20 years, they know how fucking good that side was, and we found out why.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're into the top 10.
Okay.
So 10th is South, 1908 to 18.
11
seasons, 4 titles, 2 runners-up. They won 72% of their regular season games. Average score was 15.9 to 7. In the finals, 50% win rate, but they didn't play many finals games then.
Yeah.
The total win percentage all up for that period there, 71%.
That's crazy.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
9th, South again, 1967 to 72. 6 seasons, 4 titles, 1 premiership. They missed out on 1 grand final in that time.
Wow, that's nuts.
They won 74% of the games in the regular season, 75% in the finals. So for a total of 74.31%. 8th was Balmain during the First World War period, 1914 to 21. 8 seasons long, 5 titles, never were runners-up. They won 73% of their regular season games and 100% in the finals. I will say, though, that they only played 1 finals game. That was the 1916 final, which they beat South 5-3.
Okay.
They had the best defence of any of these dynasties, where they conceded just 7.48 points per game. That's
pretty insane.
7th, Manly, 1993 to 97. 5 seasons, 1 title, 2 runners-up.
They should have won at least 2, like that.
At least 2.
I was thinking about this during the week, actually, because I want to write about that Canterbury side of 1996. 96. They should have won that game, Manly. They really should have won that game. I'm not saying that the Bulldogs didn't deserve to win it or anything, but just with how good they were, that's the killer to people really remembering that Manly team for how it should have been remembered. And that's why it's so difficult to do it,
Absolutely. They won 77% of their regular season games, which is one of the top 5 for these dynasties. And one of the best defensive sides, we've spoken about this before, in the modern era, conceded just 12.25 points per game.
Yeah.
6th is Parramatta, 1981 to 86. 6 seasons, 4 titles, 1 runner-up, so they missed 1 grand final.
Now, it needs to be – there was something that I knew that Parramatta fans would get upset about, and that break between the late 70s, early 80s. But then I'm guessing in 1980 they finished 5th or 6th?
5th.
5th, there you go. So that's what the break was, yeah.
Yep. The thing that's impressive about this Parramatta side, their regular season win percentage was 69.86%, which is still insane.
Nice.
But they were better in finals. And not many teams did that. They were 73% better in the finals.
Oh, that's cool.
Their defence was even better. So their overall win percentage was 70% in that period, that's just ridiculous. Now into the top 5. East, 1930 to 38, the Dave Brown years.
Yeah.
9 seasons, 3 titles, 3 runners-up. In the regular season, they won 74% of the games. And this is not going to sound too crazy, but in the 30s, this is nuts. Their average attack, so points per game, was 23 points per game. Most of the teams around that time were doing 16s and 17 points per game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the better sides. So they were nearly 2 converted tries per game better than their opponents at that time.
Yeah.
In the finals, 42%. So overall, a 71% win record. Fourth place is the current Panthers side.
Okay, now what are their stats?
4 seasons, 2 titles, 1 runners-up. And remember, this hasn't got this year's final system in it either.
Yeah.
Their regular season win percentage out of all of these 33 dynasties is the only one over 80%. And they are at 83.7%. So not just over by a little bit, they're over by a mile.
Yeah.
They've got the second best attack as well at 27 points per game.
Okay, now look, that's going to happen in the modern day, especially they played some Volandes ball.
Yes. Their win record in the finals is also the highest at 80%, other than that Balmain one where they had that one game.
Yep.
But for having played legitimate number of finals games, yeah. So their overall win percentage is 83.33%.
That's nuts.
And it's hard to argue with the final 3. Maybe the order of the next 2 you could probably have a discussion about. Because I thought that the team that's third would have been second, and that's South from 1922 to 35. It's the second longest dynasty with 14 seasons. They got 7 titles and 3 runners-up.
Far out.
73.74% win percentage in the regular season, 66 in the finals for an overall total of 73. Second is the Storm, 2015 to 21. 7 seasons, 2 titles, 2 runners-up. They won 76% in the regular season, 68 in the finals for a total of 75.96. And, I mean, the obvious one is St. George, 1951 to 73, 23 seasons of constantly finishing in the top 4 with 11 premierships and 3 runners-up.
It's just so outrageous.
That is Don Bradman to whoever's second best team on batting averages. That's how far away it is. It's insane.
Like, what would that'd have to be like the Panthers going through to what, the 2000, like late 2030s, early 2040s, being in top 4.
23 years, it'd be 2042.
Yeah, top 4 every year until 2042.
You think even if the Storm had not been found guilty of cheating the cap, and their run starts from 2006, that only puts them at, 17 years? They've still got 6 more to go.
That's nuts. That's nuts.
And they've cheated in there.
Yeah.
And they still haven't done it.
Yeah, they got a wooden spoon in there, so they haven't done that. Yeah, fuck, that's crazy.
So that was what it was. Obviously, it's all up for discussion and whatnot, and that's fine.
Yeah,
but yeah, I put in there a little rule there. So that was a bit of stats. You can check it out on Twitter.
Yeah, what you're saying is anybody that wants to discuss it, just shut up because you're right.
Well, obviously.
Yeah, I get
it. You don't get in this business of stats and opinion writing and opinion giving by trying to tell people that they've got a chance of proving you wrong.
It's not a discussion.
It's not a discussion.
No.
As I've said before, I don't dish out opinions per se. I just dish out facts. If you choose to not agree with them, then that just makes you stupid. Exactly.
Anything else is fake news.
I'm not going to waste your time with opinions. No one gives a fuck about opinions. We just spit facts out here.
Exactly.
That's all we're here for. So that's me blowing my own trumpet. That's out of the way.
I think it's good time for a list like that because we're coming into a final series which is potentially very historic. Like, I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like in a month from now, like, rugby league history is going to be made one way or the other, which is awesome. It's so cool when rugby league history is being made. Like, I remember that in the 2008 World Cup at the final when I was there, and I was watching New Zealand, and it was a close game. You always were used to Australia coming back, but then it was like, oh no, they're going to win this. Like, New Zealand's winning this, and you knew it was history as it was happening. And it's cool to know we're about to see that either way.
Yeah. I want to get on to one I'm going to say minor story
Okay.
that has the greatest headline. I just need to share it with you.
Okay.
NRL's ultimate journeyman abruptly leaves the Dolphins to chase his Super League dream.
That's the story that had to be written. First of all, I don't think you've got to say Gold Coast Titans journeyman because that's just implied in Gold Coast Titans player.
I want to leave the elite competition to chase my dream in a minor competition.
Can't wait to go and play for Lee.
It's like Max Verstappen saying, "Yeah, you know what? I want to leave F1 and go into my dream of playing like Gran Turismo full time on the PS5. That's my goal now." What the fuck? Well, I just had to get that out of the way.
Yeah.
All right. We got some real news.
Well, I'm ready to look at the finals games, quite honestly, because
I think we should.
Yeah. It's time. It's time.
We do. So let's have a look. What's the first game we've got here on for the week?
We've got the Brisbane Broncos hosting the Melbourne Storm up there at Suncorp Stadium. Brisbane unbelievably rested players in their last round match against this same Storm team. So the Storm are going to get 2 looks at them, which is horrifying to me. And gave up the chance to be minor premiers, which I think for the Broncos was really important that they actually went and they grabbed that and they chose not to. And to me, that was crazy. And now they're coming in off of a loss against the Storm, playing the Storm. And I don't envy them at all.
I've got some stats for these 4 games.
Okay.
All right. Melbourne have scored 1,003 points in their last 33 games against the Broncos, which is an average of 30 points per game. That goes back to the 2007 final series. God. The Broncos have won just 4 of those 33 games.
Wow.
Melbourne have won all of the last 4 finals games between them and the Broncos with a combined score of 126-24.
Holy shit.
This is the most lopsided clash.
It's crazy, yeah.
But historically, it's just, for some reason, the Broncos just go to pieces against the Storm. It's insane.
And that's why I don't understand going in and not putting your best foot forward. It's not like this Brisbane team has won a bunch of stuff already and the trophy was in the stadium ready to be wheeled out for them. And they chose not to put their best foot forward for that. All of these young players in their side, and I know they rested players, but all of these young players I think would have got a lot from being minor premiers and from being able to do it against Storm. And look, they might have put their best team out there and still lost. But I just thought it was a bad idea. And I think that it's compounded by the fact that they're playing the Storm again. I don't want Craig Bellamy to download all of the information one week and then use it the next week against the same team. I would hate it if that was happening against the Panthers, you know?
Yeah.
But it feels like it's a bad setup for their first finals run for this team. I know they've been there before and not too long ago, but this team, this group, this is their first go at it, really. And I just thought it was a bad first step forward towards it.
Well, there's a lot of changes for both these sides because obviously a ton were rested and a few have come back from injury. But the Broncos for this week, compared to what they had last week, have got the following players coming back: Adam Reynolds, Billy Walters, Ezra Mam, Herbie Farnworth, Kobe Hetherington, Katoni Staggs, Kurt Capewell, Patrick Carrigan, Payne Haas, Reece Walsh, and Selwyn Cobbo. Mm-hmm. And the Storm have got Cameron Munster, Christian Welch, Eli Katoa, Harry Grant, Jerome Hughes, Marion Seve, Nelson Asafa-Solomona, Nick Meaney, Tom Eisenhuth, Trent Laureo, Tui Kamakitha. That's him.
Yep.
Will Warbrick and Xavier Coates. These guys, these sides are basically completely different to what played last week.
Mm-hmm.
For the Broncos, that Tristan Saylor who played last week had a phenomenal performance.
Yeah.
He's 22nd man on their roster. On their squad. I'd be thinking about putting him in the 4-man bench.
I just don't know what you do with him off the bench though.
Well, they've got Jock Madden in there, who's a halfback.
Yes. See, that's not good either.
So that's a waste. Whereas Saylor, I mean, he can play at 6 and he can play fullback. So if you lose a half, you can put him in the halves.
Mm-hmm.
Your other half that's there, be it Reynolds or Mam, they can play 7, and Saylor can go in at 6. It's not going to be a struggle for him. He's that good. He can do that. He's a legit X Factor player, whereas Madden isn't.
No,
I wouldn't be carrying a halfback on a bench, not in a finals game.
No, unless they're not a pure halfback. If it was a big 5'8", big-bodied 5'8", I'd get it. Yeah, not a halfback. But even with Saylor, I mean, I don't know. I like my benches to be almost all forward rotation, like 3 forwards basically, and a big utility.
Well, that's the other thing they've got on there. They've also got Corey Oates on the bench. So they've got a winger and a halfback on the bench against the Storm.
Yeah, that if they actually take that, that's silly. That's bad.
So we'll see, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So the next game we've got
Hang on, who do you think's going to win?
Storm by 25.
Wow, that's a thrashing. I think the Storm, I think it's going to be about 32 points to 22, with the Broncos having a late try or two, and we'll be like, the Storm are one more win away from the grand final.
All right, I'm going to write these down, see how we go.
Yeah.
All right. Next one is Panthers versus the Warriors. Penrith have won their last 7 games against the Warriors, and they've won their last 6 straight finals games. And they've won 4 of their finals games that they've played at Penrith, all up.
Mm-hmm.
Penrith are clear favourites here.
Yeah, it's the Warriors have played really, really good this year, and the idea that their reward for that is to take on Penrith on an afternoon track, which is going to be pretty dry to start the game with, unless it rains. I don't think it's going to rain, but it feels unfair. It feels a little bit unfair, and it feels like that they're coming in against a Penrith team, which is we saw what they did last week with Cowboys, and I feel like there is a little bit of similarity between the Cowboys and the Warriors in that they've both got pretty sizable forward packs. I think the Warriors halves have been going better than the Cowboys halves, that's for sure. And I think the Warriors have a little bit more size in their back line as well. But I just see some similarities in the middle of the field for both teams. And we have just seen what the Panthers did to the Cowboys in a must-win game for the Cowboys. So, yeah.
The thing I like that Penrith have done here is they've managed to rest a majority of their key players, but not in a way where nearly all of them took last week off.
Yeah.
So this week they've got Matt Eisenhuth, Mitch Kenny, Scott Sorensen, Tom Jenkins coming into the 22-man squad they've got there. Just 4 changes.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. The Warriors have got Adam Fanua Blake, Charles Nickel-Clocksdale, Dallin Martinez-Zelezniak, Jackson Ford, Jazz Tavanga, Sean Johnson, Tohu Harris, Wade Egan. I find if you've got to come in against Penrith, you need to make sure that everybody is ready to go. And I don't know. I think for this side, I would have liked Sean Johnson and Tohu Harris especially, possibly even Wade Egan, to have all played last week. If you need to rest them, do it the week before that. But they need to have some mileage in their legs the game before they play against Penrith, because they're going to be working their asses off trying to crack that Panthers defense. It's the one thing that's the hardest thing to do in the game at the moment.
Yeah, and of all of these teams in the finals, if Penrith had rested players and the Storm had rested players, I'd say, I get that. Everyone else should not have rested players. They They haven't achieved anything to rest players, and that's what it comes down to. Like, what are you resting players for? What are you trying to avoid? I think the Jerome Luai injury scared the shit out of everyone in the competition, and that's why we saw so many players rest last weekend. I don't think we've ever seen a weekend like that where we've seen most teams that were in the finals, like that were at the top of the ladder I'm talking about, rested half their squad. And it was interesting because I went to the Panthers game last week. I was invited by Nadine to the Panthers game. And it was interesting to see Penrith run out, and they ran out their best team that they could because they had the players that were coming back from injuries in this finals game. So they ran out their best team that they had available and put one on the Cowboys. And they're really the only of the top four sides are the only one that can say they had a real good hit out last week. They are almost unchanged in terms of their starting lineup, and they're like everyone wants to be ready to rock and roll. We know the Panthers are ready to rock and roll, and that's the thing that gets me. And you know, the Warriors should have been in that same position where they were like, we come in, we put on a good performance in the last round, and now we're ready for the finals, and here we go. And instead they put out half a football team against the Dolphins and got smacked. And I just think it's a real bad way to go into a final series against a team that, like, Panthers know what they are. You know, they've got no questions about themselves, but there's a lot of questions about this Warriors team that they don't know about themselves, and none of us do. They might go out there and prove that, you know, doesn't matter about finals experience for their side. They'll just go out and get the job done. But we don't know that, you know, and it's going to be interesting to see how they do it. And it's the toughest test. They've got the toughest test, and it feels a bit unfair on them.
Yeah, I'm going to go Penrith by 14.
14. I think Penrith will win. I think they're going to win 38 points to 14.
I was just doing margins. You on 38-14?
38-14, yeah.
You're going big one here.
Yeah, I think what will happen is it'll be very much like last week's game. Pretty close early on. The Warriors get a good run of it, and if they don't start cracking Penrith, it'll be like last week where the machine just starts. They start wearing you down.
Yes. Okay. The next game. The Sharks play the Roosters. Just say, because there's been a bit of chat about this.
Yeah.
The Roosters are not going to be able to get any fans to the game because of all the fucking tears and salt that are going to be between Bondi and the Sharks' home ground. Have you seen the amount of sooking?
Oh, you know, it's not fair. It's not supposed to be fair. Why does everyone think that fucking sport's supposed to be fair? Hey, it's really strange.
It's got me beat. There was a time several years ago when the Sharks gave up home ground advantage. I think it was against the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. And they took their game to the Sydney Football Stadium. And they lost. And I don't think they actually took it there. I think they were told to take it there. And they lost that game. And the next time they had a home finals game in the first week, they went, you know what? We're going to play it at Shark Park. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. You know, people are saying, oh, you finished sixth, you don't deserve to get home ground advantage. You're going, but the team who finished seventh does?
Yeah, it's a strange one. And just so much whinging about it. Like, and the thing is too, like, it's the same old fucking news cycle we've been through 3 times where we used to play the big games at the Sydney Football Stadium basically because it was the one big ground in Sydney. And then, you know, now it's 2023 and there's a bunch of different grounds we can play at. So we make it a little bit of a better system for the teams that have earned the right to host finals games at home. And that's it. It's all over, right? I understand that the Sharks Stadium isn't big, but if the Sharks decided to play at Wayland Reserve, that's their right.
Absolutely it is. Can we go back to have a look at some of the smaller crowds in the finals?
Mm-hmm.
pre-COVID. We can't use anything post, because the only small one we've had post-COVID has been the Sharks versus Cowboys last year, which was at Shark Park, and it was obviously 12,500.
Yep.
So we've got, let's see, 2019. What are the small crowds here? 15,000. Manly played Cronulla at Brookvale.
Now, I think I wrote about that because I was saying that they should move that to the SFS, and I was looking at how long it took to get from, like, say, Shark Park and Manly's Brookvale Oval to the SFS. And, like, from Shark Park to the SFS isn't a huge amount of time, but it's some time. And from Brookvale Oval to the SFS, it's anywhere between, like, 45 minutes to 4.5 hours.
Yeah. I think for Manly, Brookvale Oval, especially at that time, insane record there, especially against the Sharks. So, yeah, we're going to take that game there.
Yeah.
The next crowd under 20,000 prior to that, 2018, Cronulla played Penrith at the SFS, got 19,000. 2018, the Warriors played Penrith at Stadium Australia, 17,000. Same year, Melbourne played South at the Amy Park at 17,000. What do we got here? 2017. Sharks played Cowboys at the Sydney Football Stadium, 16,000. Penrith played Manly at the Sydney Football Stadium, 15,000. My point here, okay, is there was this ridiculous article by Andrew Webster coming out saying, there's going to be a finals game at, they're going to be trying to ram in 12,500 people into Shark Park when there's a 45,000 seat stadium up the road. Just 20 Ks up the road, just a few clicks up the road.
Yeah, they always make that high.
Yeah, and you're like, the problem is, and this is not a slur on the Sharks, okay, but obviously what we're seeing here in recent times, when they've played another Sydney team, even at the Sydney Football Stadium, at the other team's home ground, or at their own home ground, they don't draw big crowds.
No, their crowds are small everywhere.
Right? So a 12,500 stadium that is completely chock-a-block and overflowing is probably going to be more apt than going to a 45,000 seat stadium and half filling the thing at best.
Yeah, and them crowds that you said for the Cronulla Sharks where they did play at the SFS, they weren't great. Like, it wasn't like they got 35,000 there for those games. It was like 20,000 against the Panthers. Yeah,
but even when Penrith and Manly were forced to go there for a game, it's a long slog to get there. And Cronulla's, it's not that much different. It's at the far south part of the Sydney CBD. You got a northern one and a far western one. Obviously, Penrith's further away than the other two. But it's a long slog to make them drag all their fans to some place in the city where they don't have any advantage. Especially when playing against another Sydney team who would have that advantage.
Yeah, they go on about it being their home ground all the time.
I'm just fascinated by how much sooking has gone on over it. And no one has sooked about all these other games that were played at other grounds. It's just utterly, why isn't there the same sooking about the fact that Penrith aren't playing their finals games at the 45,000 seat stadium? Why are they only playing in front of 25,000 fans?
It'll be to like 20, or I think it'll be 22 maybe, because the capacity keeps on getting lowered.
Mate, there's a stadium that's just 32 clicks down the dirt road past a few mailboxes, mate. It's kind of 45 grand.
You could basically see it. It's almost at the end of the street.
Hey, fucking hell, mate. On your way to go and get the mail, you go past one that can hold 60 or 70,000.
Look, I think the only reason they didn't say it about Penrith is because the Shark Park is so dramatically smaller, and it was kind of that they had their focus and their trigger point for people, and they went with it. And so,
that's the nuts part of it.
Yeah, and people,
the same argument could apply to Penrith and any other team that's playing at their home ground that's not Sydney Football Stadium or Allianz. Even Parramatta. Parramatta's, their new stadium doesn't hold 45,000. They don't complain about them playing there.
Yeah, and it's not like the game's struggling for the money either. Like, we've got the luxury of being able to say, this is what we're going to do. and we understand people will not be able to get to the game, and if you've got a ticket, it's going to be bloody expensive. But the TV ratings will be huge for these games, and like everything's going in an all right direction. And like in an ideal world, yeah, we want everyone to be able to play at home in a bigger stadium. But like it's fine. The world is going to keep spinning. The football game's going to get played, and then we'll move on to week 2.
Well, it's not 1962 where ticket sales is what's important. It's where all the money comes from.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not England.
No, we're not counting away fans.
People walking past the ground. It's such a stupid opinion to have, and such a stupid thing to get cranky about.
And of all of the moments to do it, we've got this final series where all of these games this weekend are awesome for their own reasons. And anybody that's focusing on the fucking stadium sizes is just like, you're focusing on the wrong thing.
Absolutely. The stats here. Sharks have lost all of their last 5 finals games, conceding an average of 30 points per game.
Mm-hmm.
And Roosters have won 4 of their last 5 games at PointsBet Stadium. However, that one loss was this year.
Now, that Sharks losing record in the finals, does that go back to the good old days of
2017, I think it goes back to.
Okay, so it's a little bit after the
Yeah, it's compliant.
Yeah, I'm glad you said compliant, because I was going through my head of everything I could call it, and there was just getting more libelous and more libelous. So, okay.
For both sides, not many changes here, and most of it is to the extended bench.
Mm-hmm.
For the Sharks side, they've got the only 2 that might come through. Matt Moylan and William Kennedy are both listed on the extended bench.
Mm-hmm.
For the Sharks' best interest and for their attack, they should keep Matt Moylan there. They don't need to race Kennedy back, because Tracy has been doing a bloody good job there filling in.
I think he might be injured though. Like I know that.
Yeah, they said he had a knee injury, but they said he felt a bit of a jolt in there. But he's had scans today, and they've come back and saying there's absolutely no injuries in there, and he says he's feeling fine, so he should be okay. And I don't know if William Kennedy's been rushed back or not. One other thing too that might motivate the Sharks is if they get to the grand final, Wag Graham will play his 300th game in the grand final.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, it's not happening, but
nah, it's not.
For the Roosters, Joey Manu's back, and they've got Dylan Napper on the extended bench.
Yeah, big inclusion, Dylan Napper, big puppy. Yeah, I think bringing back Joey Manu, it feels very, very early for the hammy injury that he did.
I do tend to agree.
Yeah.
2 of your favourite teams here. Which one are you going to be going with for the win?
You say that like I have any sort of disdain for these clubs. I just think one shouldn't exist and one should have folded. I think that this is really the hardest one of the round for me, because I think eventually the Roosters are going to be found out in a massive way, but I don't know that it's the Sharks that are going to do it. I think the Sharks definitely capable of doing it to the Roosters. And the Sharks, I haven't thought much of them all season. I've been really honest about that. And I guess I feel the same about both of these teams in a way. I just feel as though they're of no consequence to what we're going to see happen in the finals. And as soon as they run into someone else, I think if these teams were playing anybody else, I'd probably have picked anybody else in the finals. I'm talking even Canberra Raiders, right?
Mm.
So, but because they're playing each other, it's like, it's hard to pick. But I'd probably go with the Sharks, just because I think they're probably a little more settled. Their injuries aren't the key injury. Like, I think Manu, I'd be worried about him all game, and he's a big part of their team. And yeah, I think I'd probably lean towards the Sharks.
Yeah, I'm going with the Sharks by 4. I think the Roosters played their big semi-final game last week against the Bunnies, and I still wasn't overly convinced by their performance.
No.
Their attack was just clunky.
Yeah, it was, and I mean,
that's probably the best it's looked for the last bloody 2 months, and it still doesn't look right.
No, it doesn't, and I think that I haven't looked through who they've played in the last 2 months, but it feels like they haven't really played any of the big guns. It feels like they've had, and I'm not saying they've had a soft run, because you don't have soft runs in the NRL.
Oh, let's have from when they run started, so around 21. They beat the Titans, then they lost to the Broncos, and then they had 5 straight wins against Manly, Dolphins, Parramatta, West Tigers, and South.
Yeah, see,
none of those teams finished in the top 8.
No, so they did really well to make the finals. They really did.
Oh yeah,
and against South sort of were a slow motion, disintegration happening from mid-season. So beating Souths wasn't anything great. But we'll see how they go. This is a real 50-50 game. I'm probably just leaning towards the Sharks, and I'm going to say Sharks 21 and the Roosters 14.
Ooh. Yeah, I think it's probably going to be a close one. The last match on Sunday, Knights versus the Raiders.
Sold out.
This is the first time these two sides have met in a finals match.
Oh, really?
There you go.
That's kind of random.
The Knights' last home final game and also their last home final win was in 2006.
Wow, that's crazy.
And the Raiders have had 5 wins in their last 8 visits to McDonald Jones Stadium against the Knights.
They've both brought, I know Crocker ruled himself out, so that's a big blow for the Knights.
I'll tell you what, the way he's been playing at the moment, I think the Raiders would be better off without Jordan Rapana in the side.
Craig Nurembergs is a really big fan of the Raiders, and a couple of weeks ago, and I like him. He's one of the journalists I like. I think he's a human being. But a few weeks ago, he said, "Is Jordan Rapana the best winger the Raiders have ever had?" And I just had to, I wanted to find a rocking chair and just rock back and forth in it for about 8 hours, because the guy is a fucking disaster zone. And he does his disasters at 1,000 miles an hour, which is a credit to him, but they're fucking disasters,
I've always said about him that you will get, every week, you'll get 30 minutes of really, really top quality football out of Jordan Rapana, and then 50 minutes of some of the most insane fucking brain snaps you'll ever see.
Yes.
Paul Carriage would be watching him play and rubbing his forehead, rubbing his temples, going, "What the fuck?
Yeah. Have some fucking composure."
Think, man. Think. What are you doing?
Be a professional, Jordan. Fuck.
Have you not played this game before?
This isn't the time to lose your fucking head.
There was a moment, key moment last weekend against the Sharks. A kick was put in. It went along the ground. And, got off the top of my head, I think Jamal Fogarty turned around and he was standing there not too far away from the ball. He was not quite in reach, but he's standing there as kind of going in the line of the ball, but he's blocking it. It's a grubber. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, the ball is still 2-3 meters from the Raiders line. Rapana decides to slide in, and his knee digs in, and then he doesn't slide far enough, and the ball just bounces away from him. Gleefully just pops along, and the Sharks score from him. You're going, why are you diving like that? You've got a blocker there to keep the defence away from you a little bit, give you a bit of a buffer zone. Every other fullback picks that up. They'll either try and hurt it over the sideline if it's going too fast, or they'll pick it up. Why are you sliding? Especially sliding in with your back to the defence. Yeah. The first thing they're going to do, even if you take the ball cleanly, they're going to push you into your own goal because you've got no momentum and no way of keeping yourself into the field of play. So you may as well just pick it up safely.
Yeah, and Jordan Rapana is the sort of guy that it will be in position at fullback, who will get to the ball in plenty of time, give maximum effort getting to the ball, and somehow completely miss the ball, slide over the sideline, and someone will just pick it up and score, and no one will be near them. And you're like, how the fuck did that even happen?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's the sort of stuff he does.
He is. I find him so frustrating to watch because you can see him do some remarkable stuff within the same minute that he does some remarkably insanely stupid stuff. And you're like, how do Raiders fans watch him, let alone think of him as being one of their best ever in any position, or even put him in that conversation? Because he is hard work to watch. He is the Raiders version of David Nofaluma.
He's part of the problem.
Oh man, he hurts my soul when I watch him play.
Like, and the look that he makes after he's done the clanger too is just priceless.
Oh fuck, I've done it again. Or, oh come on, that's not right.
He's looking at everyone as if to say, it's as though he's almost watching himself play. And he's like, yes. Can you fucking believe that shit had just happened? That's ridiculous, you know?
Oh, he hurts me.
He would have, if there was a moment that Jordan Rapana should have been involved in, it's when the Storm won in 1999 with the head high in the last seconds. Like, that should have been Jordan Rapana coming across and, you know, coat hanger and who was it, Craig Smith? Something like that. And, instead of Jamie Ainscote, that should have been Jordan Rapana.
That's entirely a Rapana play right there.
That 100%.
Oh, man. Sebastian Chris is also ruled out, obviously, because he got suspended for 5 weeks for I'm going to say this in all honesty, an accidental but ugly spear tackle.
Yes, I think completely accidental. One of those things where you get a good leverage on a player, and he doesn't weigh anything at that point.
You look at the mechanics of it. The guy he tackled, Katoa. He was stepping away from Chris as Chris was tackling, which meant all his momentum was going away from him. And Chris has tackled him like both arms around the waist, and he's like pushing him, but because the bloke he's picking up is moving away from him, all the momentum is pushing away, and it's going with the momentum that Chris is coming to tackle with. So when he's tackling him the way he has, he's always going to get lifted into the air. And I reckon for most players, as soon as they get them up there, the idea is try and get them flat, horizontal, not pointing down. Yeah. And I think there's a bit of he's trying to get a bit of that mechanics in there. And the one thing that worried me is that as he's going down to the ground, Katoa's ducked his head, and I've gone, oh, fuck, don't do that.
Yeah, I freaked out. As that tackle was happening.
And I was so glad he just stood straight back up. And I went, fuck, because, I mean, we all know that's what Alex McKinnon did. Yeah. And it's an instinct thing, but he ducked his head as he was being plowed, not straight down, which was probably the saving grace for Katoa here, but McKinnon was being plowed, like speared in at a 45-degree angle.
Yeah, McKinnon's one was, and he had a lot of players in that tackle as well, the McKinnon one, so he had a lot more weight and stuff. It wasn't just his own body weight. It was like, it must have been hundreds of kilos, you know.
Yeah, and all his momentum was being used against him as well, because you know, they were tackling him in the direction he was running.
Yeah. But I freaked out on that one on the weekend. That was just like, oh my God. And as you said, when he bounced up, it was like, oh, that could have been so bad.
So fuck.
I don't know because it's weird. Some people listening to this podcast won't have played footy before. And there are moments in tackles where you get the right leverage and just things work in the right way where you can tackle a player and it doesn't matter how big they are or small they are compared to you. They weigh nothing for a moment. And especially
especially if they're stepping away from you in the direction that you're coming at them from and tackling them. They basically have no weight. Yeah,
and so you can, and that's why, and another one is like when you see a player that every single time they hit someone really well, it's because they're hitting them in the right way with the right leverage in the right point. And it's an interesting thing, the game. And that's why it feels so good to smash someone because you don't feel it, but they get absolutely poleaxed, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why players even the professionals, if they smash someone, they get pumped up about it because it feels good to smash someone.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, that was one of those tackles that you could see he weighed nothing in that moment. And he could have done whatever he wanted to him. And unfortunately, the momentum and everything, it took him neck first. Like the thing that was going through my head as he was in the air was like neck. That's the only thing I was thinking.
Oh, that was the same. I was looking at going, oh, mate, keep rotating or landing flat on your gut. But man, he just turned so quick too once he got up in the air.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, and then he got up. I was like, geez, he's lucky.
Yeah, he really was. He really was.
So for this game, the Knights have got Gagai, Hastings, Ponga, Kurt Mann, Lachlan Fitzgibbon, Leo Thompson, Phoenix Crossland, and Tyson Frizzell all back. And for the Raiders, Danny Levi, Ethan Strange, James Schiller, Jared Croker, Xavier Savage. Most of those guys will be on the extended bench, I assume. Yeah, look, I haven't really been impressed by either of these sides, even though the Knights are on a nine-game winning streak. And they haven't been playing bad, but I don't know. I just haven't been overly impressed by what they've done. The Raiders
feels a little bit like what the Roosters have done, but with a bit quality,
a bit more polish.
Yeah,
the Raiders. It feels to me like they were just given a wild card entry into the finals.
Yeah,
how can you have a points difference of over 100, negative 100 points and make the finals?
I'm pretty sure I found one because I was talking about this with people on Twitter. I found one where the Raiders were minus 170.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, and it was it might have been 2005, something like that.
No, it was earlier than that. It was when, I'm pretty sure it was the year that the Bulldogs had their points scrapped.
2002.
And it was.
Oh, that would make sense, yeah.
So the Bulldogs lost 38 points and they went down to last place, and it pushed Canberra from 9th up to 8th because Canberra had 10 wins from 24 games.
Because I wasn't looking at the overall table. I was just purely looking at top 8 and like negative for and against. There was a few years, I think it was a few years after that, might have been 2009 or something, where the Cowboys finished in 3rd with minus 70, which was like weird.
Yeah, I remember that one too. That one, actually, I think that one was a bit more recent, wasn't it?
I see, because I stopped at a certain point, stopped going through them. So I think it was before, I stopped at, I think, 2011 or something.
I could be wrong. No, it was 2007, yeah. I thought it was a bit more recent than that.
Yeah.
They were 3rd, and they conceded 618 points.
Yeah, crazy.
It's nuts. But yeah, it's pretty bad performance defensively by the Raiders. I think I did the stat earlier, which, in an earlier episode, about how most of their wins have been by, 6 points or so as the average winning margin, but the average losing margin is by about 20. Yeah,
and like, and I remember when we talked about them, and it's like if you blindly gave, say, someone like you, and said, okay, you kind of know the margins and all that for the all seasons. This team had this many points scored against them. Where do you reckon they finished? This team had this for and against. Where do you reckon they finished? All of it sort of points to them being like about 12th place on the ladder. But somehow they're there. They made it.
Yeah. I'm not. I literally don't know which way to go with this. I'm thinking I'm going to go with the Knights.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that this will be, if the Knights win this, it'll be their last win for the year.
Yeah.
The Raiders, though, are capable of getting the win. If it gets down to a real grinding affair in the middle, the Raiders will get over the top of them. I don't think the Raiders' attack has enough flair or variance to trouble the Knights. So they've got to rely on playing a grinding footy game through the middle.
Yeah.
But momentum's a fucking beautiful thing coming this time of year. So I'm going to go with the Knights by 3 points.
I think that I worry about the Knights because Hastings, I feel as though, is coming back probably early. And I think Ponga is definitely coming back early. And I can see
he certainly is.
And I could see where they, like, either one or both of them don't like it's 5 minutes into the match and they're walking off the field. Like, and I hope it doesn't happen, but I just feel as though that wouldn't be a shock, and that would really derail the Knights. But at the same time, this Raiders team has zero composure, and they're poorly coached. And Ricky Stewart has been, moving his side around and deciding that players that he's moved from other positions are no longer suited to those positions. I mean, to have the Jack White thing is weird. And I just say, yeah, I'm going for I think the Knights will win. I think it'll be a high scoring one. I think it'll be 28-22. Knights win.
Well, there you go. Well, we've agreed on who's going to win all the games.
Yeah. Well, we're experts.
That is true. That is very true.
Can we talk about if the unexpected happens?
The unexpected?
Okay. So say
a blackout?
We just forfeit the game at that point, don't you? It's just unless it's play 60 minutes and that's it. You've got a result. Otherwise, the game is not. It's null and void.
No, you play a bit of it a few days later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that sounds stupid, Andrew. Who would come up with that idea?
England.
Okay, so say the Panthers lose, and everything is open. Like you don't know in the finals until it happens. Say the Panthers lose. Do we know who they would be playing?
Yeah, we do. Where's the ladder predictor thing? Where is it? You can still do it. Right. So, Penrith loses.
Yep.
And who else are we going to have? What other results are we going to have?
Well,
Brisbane versus Storm.
Let's say the Storm go through because it's hard with all them stats in their favour. Okay, let's say
Sharks Roosters.
Okay, let's say the Roosters win.
Okay, and Knights Raiders.
And let's say the Knights win. So we've mixed it up enough.
Okay. Next week it would mean that the Panthers play the Knights and the Broncos play the Roosters.
Okay, so Panthers Knights would be interesting, and Broncos. I think the Broncos would walk through the Roosters.
So if Penrith lose, they'll be playing either Newcastle or Canberra.
The Raiders do not want to play. So the poor Raiders. Let's pour one out for the Raiders.
So as I said,
are you there? I lost you.
Whoever wins that game,
I lost you for a moment. Okay,
I'm still yapping away.
Okay, go on.
I was just saying, that's kind of why I was looking at it and saying, I remember looking at that much thinking, whoever wins that Knights Raiders game will be the last win they have for the year, because they will be playing against either the Warriors in New Zealand or Penrith in Penrith. Like, that's good fucking luck.
Yeah, you're fucked either way there.
Yeah. And so the winner out of Sharks Roosters will be playing against the loser of Broncos Storm.
And I think that for both of those teams, they're fucked there.
Yeah, look, the thing is, I think the Broncos have, I don't know, there's something about them that makes me think there's a bit of them that seems like they're a bit more beatable than the Storm and the Warriors.
I tell you what it is, right? So the Panthers and Storm, we know what they are. They've got the experience. They tick all the boxes, Panthers and Storm. So let's put them to the side. Mm-hmm. Difference between the Raiders and the Broncos. This is kind of their first run for both clubs, right?
Yep.
All the expectations is on the Broncos, and there's not expectation on the Warriors. The Warriors are like, you're here. Like, let's see what you do. Whereas the Broncos, the thing is like, okay, you're here now, go and do it.
Yeah.
It's a slightly different outlook for both clubs, but the pressures that come with that are very different. You know, the Warriors can go out there and throw caution to the wind, and if they lose, man, it was a great season. They had a great run. If the Broncos lose, then it's like, well, you fucking lost, and you lost the minor premiership. Yeah. And then you just fucked again, you know? So that's a big difference. And I think that's what it is.
I think you're right. Because I think both the Sharks and the Roosters potentially are capable of beating the Broncos.
Really weak.
But in the finals, I don't rate either of them a chance against the Storm. It's no hope.
But the Broncos, embarrassing. Yeah.
I just think there's just something about the Broncos that feels like there's parts in the games where they can be a little inconsistent, and sometimes they will play a little panicky at times. Mm-hmm. And I think the Sharks and the Roosters are, I'm not saying by much, can be a little bit more composed. The Roosters certainly can because they've got a lot more experience there. Mm-hmm. The Sharks' attack is a little bit more varied than the Roosters and can throw a few more things at the Broncos' defence. And the Broncos' defence is kind of like their attack. It can get sloppy for small moments in games. Mm-hmm. Whereas I don't see that as being as big an issue with the Storm or the Warriors. It's obviously not an issue for the Panthers. So the Broncos are just, and I'm not talking about, 20 or 30 minutes per game. I'm talking about, 5-10 minute spots where the Broncos can be a little bit sloppy in attack and or defence. And in finals footy, sometimes the form you've had during the season to get to the finals becomes irrelevant because you're playing a different beast of game now. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, the Roosters are a better side on paper than 7th. Not by much, but I'd say they're a better side than the Knights and the Sharks. That's, if we're looking at them on paper, they should have finished higher than both of those sides.
I don't know. I haven't rated the Roosters this year.
I know, but do you genuinely think that the Knights are a better team on paper than the Roosters, though?
On paper, I don't think there's that much of a difference between them. I honestly don't.
I think the Roosters are considerably better than the Knights on paper.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I just, there's a lot of those Roosters players that I just don't rate. A whole heap of them.
I'd also say that
this
is probably going to be, if they don't make some genuine changes to their roster within the next year or two, this could be their last genuinely threatening run in a final series. And I don't think they're going to be genuinely threatening, but I don't think they're going to be stronger next year or the year after that without some changes to especially their pack.
Yeah.
They've got to make some changes soon and start refreshing that squad and that roster.
Yeah, I mean, people have gone on about their pack, and it's like, Jared Waerea-Hargreaves leads them and stuff like that, and it's like it doesn't matter. They're not good. Like, I know they've got Lindsay Collins in there. He's a good player, but
very good.
He's you
can't play lone hand in the forwards in this modern game.
Exactly, and like I just look at what the Panthers did to them, and it was chalk and cheese. Yeah. There's a difference between being an actual good pack and people just saying it.
Now we've got the final chat out of the way.
Oh, I had a few more questions.
Oh, okay.
I got a few more questions.
Go for it.
So some of the interesting things that the big one for me, right, is this.
Yep.
The Storm win. They're one win away from the grand final, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They then put the Broncos on the other side of the table.
That's right, yeah.
So the Broncos would have to win then their week 2 game, and if they won that, they would then go through and potentially play the Panthers if the Panthers beat the Warriors. And the Broncos, even when they were crap, would play pretty damn good against the Panthers. Like the Panthers had to win some fucking games against the Broncos, even when the Broncos were terrible. And that stuck with me a little bit. And if that was the case, didn't it just turn into an armchair ride to the grand final for the fucking Storm?
Oh, yeah.
So that
Storm are positioned pretty nicely at the moment, and I think they know it.
Yeah.
And to be able to get your away finals match to be at Suncorp against a team that you absolutely dominate at that very ground, it's basically a home game.
Yeah.
What a win that is.
It's huge. And the other thing is, too, that comes out of it, and I know that there's a lot of other people that probably think I'm dismissing their teams when I talk about the Panthers, but I'm just going by recent results in finals games, Anything can happen in this finals series. I don't know. That's why we're going to play the games. But if we ended up with a grand final that was Panthers versus Storm, it would feel a little bit Panthers versus Raiders early 90s, getting one back on them. There'd be a little bit of that in there. And damn, that would be a game. That would be a fucking game.
I reckon that's probably now become the most likely outcome.
Yeah, so do I.
And yeah, I think the Storm are the only team capable of pushing the Panthers.
I agree. Although I do worry about the Broncos a bit, but I agree for the most part. And the thing that gets me is that I feel as though the Storm could come out in a game like that and beat the Panthers. They've definitely got the ability to.
Yeah.
But if we saw the sort of game that the Panthers had the last two times in the regular season against the Storm, if it was something like that, where, like, say, the Storm get out to a really great game, great lead, and then all of a sudden the Panthers score 38-0 against them. If we saw that in the grand final, I don't know how to rate the Panthers if they were able to do something like that. Like, I'd just say, Andrew, you tell me what you think. Because it'd break my brain.
It would. I was just looking at the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where the Raiders rank on their points difference?
Just on points difference, do they rank? I'm going to say, what did I say, about 12th?
Lower.
Really? What, 14th?
14th. The only teams that've got a better points difference than is the Tigers, the Dragons, and the Bulldogs. Even the Titans are better. And they're minus 126. The Dolphins minus 111. The Raiders were minus 137. Hang on, is that right, or did I get that wrong somewhere? No, that's right. Yeah, it's insane.
I think that I've just realised something that you need to look up.
Mm-hmm.
The most consistent team in Australian Rugby League history in terms of where they finish on the ladder, because I think it's probably every Gold Coast team.
I don't know.
They just finish out there. They're just mediocre.
I think the Magpies go pretty close.
The Magpies would push. I think that the West Tigers would be fucking incredible on that list.
Well, they've got an awful lot of 9th and 14th and 15th in there.
Yeah, so their average is going to be, like, they're going to be pretty close. Like,
the average is going to sit around the 12th area somewhere, 12th or 13th,
yeah.
Which they don't finish too often.
I think you would have to do it by, I mean, I'm probably describing how you get to the mean, but like you take the average finish and then you look at how different it gets from that. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're the stats guy here. I've got a stats guy, Andrew. I don't do the stats. I got a stats guy.
That's right. An entire department. Just leave it with them. They'll sort it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I remember. I was going to have a look in the three teams at the bottom. Actually, we're going to even look at the bottom 5.
Can I make a really good argument, by the way?
Yeah.
I think you can argue that the West Tigers are better than they were last year.
Yeah, that hat-wearing Gronk said that. Old Chairman Lee. No, we've definitely improved this year. And I went and looked at the ladder, and yeah, you know what? Tigers had the same number of wins and losses this year as they did last year.
Oh, shit.
But their attack and defence combined was 37 points better than last year. And so I did the numbers, and if they kept improving at this rate, in 8 years' time, their points difference would be +6, and you could argue that it might be 12 wins and 12 losses, and they might be sitting around 9th again. So we're 8 years away from being 9th again.
He will stay there as long as it takes, Andrew.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, if they were +6 this year, they'd be sitting in 7th place on the ladder.
Yeah. Oh, shit. When I saw you tweet about that, I was like, oh.
It's an 8-year plan. It's an 8-year plan that started, it's actually a 15-year plan. It started 7 years ago.
Yeah. So you wanted to talk about the last 3 teams on the ladder, yeah?
Well, I thought, because I've seen some articles saying that the Bulldogs were clearly the worst team this year, and the argument for that is their points difference is atrocious. It's the worst in the comp. It's minus 331.
Yeah.
But they did finish 15th, so they were 2 wins clear of the Dragons and 3 wins clear of the Tigers.
Do we keep statistics on games won versus games lost?
Yes.
Okay, because I feel like that would be a better gauge.
It's usually a pretty good go. I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. We've been using it since 1908 to determine who plays in the finals every year.
Yeah. That makes sense.
It does to me.
Yeah.
Anyone suggesting that the Tigers are not the worst team in the comp, or even suggesting that they're better, just fucking no.
Yeah, it's mental gymnastics. It's stupid.
The same win record as the season before, and to have only improved your points difference by 37, that's not an improvement, right? If you're basically stationary, you're going backwards in the modern day.
Yeah.
And you look at their roster for next year, it's not an improvement on this year. It's certainly not an improvement on what they had last year. It's going worse.
It's going to be way worse, I reckon, hey?
Yeah, and with a new coach who's never done it before.
Yeah. And with all that losing momentum.
Yeah. Everything's it's all just falling into place perfectly.
Yeah.
There was a clip of Phil Gould during the week talking about how he's not surprised that South turned to shit after, in the middle of the year, talking about how great they were looking and then walking that back. And I replied to that basically by saying he's just like Tim Sheens, considered a great many, many decades ago, but now he's just irrelevant and almost made themselves redundant.
Yeah, it's I mean, we've joked about that with Phil Gould for so long, where he'll be like, you know what? I knew Greg Inglis would be a good player. It's like, yeah, that fucking super athlete, the guy that was a grown man when he was like 14, destroying everyone. Yeah, he was always going to be a tough one to work out, you know? Yeah, Phil Gould does that. He loves shooting the arrow and painting a bullseye around it.
That's right, yeah. So yeah, the other thing about the West Tigers to talk about their state this year. I got asked during the week, has a team ever come last and got the wooden spoon, and the following year gone one position worse or worse than that and still got the wooden spoon? The answer is yes. It's now happened twice.
Can I guess them?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
So obviously you know one of them.
What's that?
You know one of them, obviously, because it's just happened this year.
Oh, well, the West Tigers.
Yeah. So they were 16th with the wooden spoon last year, and they finished 17th with the wooden spoon this year.
And there's only one other team that's done it ever before.
Only one other team that's done it.
Okay.
So you've got to be thinking about years where
I know.
A team got the wooden spoon, and the year after that,
expansion.
I'm talking to the listeners, just in case they're still listening.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the following year we had one or more teams got added to the comp, and this team was still shit.
I am going to say.
Yep, you're right.
Okay. No, I'm starting to go through, and I've got a couple of options.
Okay,
but I think I'm probably right.
Talk us through your options. And
okay, so let me talk you through my thought process, and then I'll give you an answer. Okay, My thought process.
Feels like a game show. Go on.
My thought process.
Yep.
1995, 4 teams come in. Okay, some of them weren't too bad. I could see. I mean, Souths were terrible during that time. Wests were Wests. The Gold Coast maybe were Gold Coasty, but they're just mediocre. They're never really absolutely dreadful. I'm going to say Wests.
It is West.
Yep.
But it wasn't from those years.
What years?
Because in 1994, Balmain got the wooden spoon.
Oh, really? Wow.
Only their 4th wooden spoon.
Hang on. What about 95, you mean, yeah?
In 95, I'm pretty sure the Cowboys finished last.
Yeah, but... Oh, okay. So it was just finishing last. I thought it was like finish last, but then you get worse.
So you've got to get the wooden spoon in both years, but the second year, you have to go down an extra spot on the ladder.
Okay.
Yeah. You can have a second crack if you want, but it is West. It's
Wests, and would it be... Oh, man. I'm going to say in like... When did Illawarra come in?
82.
82. I'm going to say 82.
It's not far off.
83.
87.
87.
1987, West finished last.
Yeah.
And then 1988, we had 3 new teams come in, and they still finished last, and they got the wooden spoon both years.
Yeah.
So they went 13th and then 16th. So they did it worse than the West Tigers.
I just realised that Wests probably would win that consistency thing.
Yeah.
Because they've sucked for the most part.
Absolutely. They've also got the record, the Magpies, of being the only team to go from having the wooden spoon to being the premiers in consecutive years.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also the only team to have done that in reverse.
Fucking poor fans. Imagine if I won even half of that club, hey?
It's just part of the DNA.
It really is.
Now,
you know what I described? I was on the Rambling of the Sape podcast on Saturday evening, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about British Rugby League for the most part. And we touched on the West Tigers, and I said that the West Tigers, it's like having a tiger skin carpet, and you can smell something really bad, and you kick it up and lift it over, and there's a dead, rotten magpie under it, and you're like, oh, that's the smell.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Except there's a lot of magpies that are dead underneath it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, pretty phenomenal that. I found out too later on, thanks to our regular listener Bob Harvey, that that tweet with that stat that I put in there on Twitter, that became the legwork for an article that someone over at Yahoo wrote.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't even know about that. They just took my tweet, embedded it into the article, and then talked around it.
Oh, really? Who wrote it?
No idea. Some unknown bloke. I've never heard of him before.
Yeah. But
there you go. Just doing the legwork for journos now, just with a tweet. How hard's journalism these days?
I know, right?
I'll just go on Twitter.
To be fair, though, I have a stats guy I use.
I have heard about him.
Yeah, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. Hey?
He's handy?
He's handy. You know, one thing about him, he's thick like a can of Pepsi. That's what I've heard. I've heard he's packing just a hog.
Oh, yeah, well, look, pretty much all those stats guys do.
I've heard, right, my stats guy, I've heard that in some countries they consider it a deformity so big.
That's very true.
Yeah.
That's very true. Look, I've heard similar rumours. I can't argue with it. Impressive.
Just the word on the street.
Yeah. It's part of the reason why you can do so much typing too. He's basically got 3 arms.
Yeah.
Fucking
tripod.
Yeah.
Kickstand.
That's the word going around. Also heard he charges a fuck ton as well. Not for the stats work.
I was going to say, what for? Do I fucking owe him money? I don't want him to strangle me with anything.
Checks in the mail.
Yeah.
He'll believe you. Don't worry about it. Well, we touched on a issue with the English Rugby League recently. Lee versus Huddersfield.
Okay, can you take us through what happened, then what the outcome should have been, and then what the idiots at the Rugby Football League decided to do?
Oh, this is phenomenal, this one. Broke new ground, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So, this is phenomenal. Okay, the match was abandoned in the 48th minute. This is between Lee and Huddersfield due to a floodlight failure.
Mm-hmm.
So all the power went out. They couldn't see anything. So this game it started on Friday, the 1st of September. And so they suspended the game on the 48th minute. The RFL then decided the match would be resumed on Sunday, the 3rd of September at 3 p.m. So the match was resumed 42 hours after it started.
Mm-hmm.
So it was agreed that it would resume exactly as it was left on the night before, with the same number of interchange players remaining, and the same teams, same match officials, same sideline judges, all that sort of stuff. Same squads, the same players are on the field at the same time. They try to keep everything as identical as possible. The only thing you've got when you do this
Mm-hmm.
is the one thing that you can't add back into it is momentum.
And fatigue.
And fatigue. But at halftime, Lee was leading this game 16-6. And just 2 or 3 minutes before the power went out, Huddersfield scored a try to reduce the deficit to 16-10. And they were in the ascendancy. They were coming back. When you come back, all that's gone. Lee ended up winning the game 34-16. They ran away with it. That's the problem with doing this. Now, in the past, there's been a number of games over in England that have been suspended or abandoned. A lot of them has been due to like freak snowstorms. There's even been a few occasions where a player has died on the field, or they've been involved in such a horrendous accident that they've had to put an ambulance on the field and do CPR on them or take them away to a hospital, and they found out shortly after that the player passed away, or graphic things like that. And the decision on every single one of those occasions was either the game just remains abandoned, so all the players get all the stats they achieved in that game for appearances and points scored, but the actual result does not count.
Yeah.
Or the alternate option was they play the game in full on a different day, all over again.
So they null and void the entire contest and
exactly
just
right.
replay it completely.
But again, the play stats will still say the same, but the entire thing is completely scratched, and they just play the game at a different time.
Mm-hmm.
Those have been the only two ways they've ever dealt with this before, until now. And so when I criticised this and explained all of this on, talking about it on Twitter when I was mentioned on there, some of the reasons I had as to why this was right were insane. People saying there wasn't enough time to play the full game. I went, are they that strapped for time that they can only play 32 minutes and not 80?
Mm.
What about the fatigue issue? I'm going, that's not an issue. Like every year, Super League has to reschedule games and have games 2 or 3 days apart because of the Challenge Cup and certain teams getting into the next round, which, because it's a knockout, you don't know who's going to be doing that and how it impacts the rest of the competition. So everything has to be rejigged around. And sometimes a team will play 2 games in the space of 4 days. So fatigue is not an issue here either. They're constantly dealing with this every single year. Time's not an issue either. There's no reason for this. This is just nuts.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, the other thing is, like, if you've got aren't the rules in place so that when something happens like this, you go straight to the rule? There's no area for emotions and interpretation and stuff like that. It's just bang, this is what we do. And that we have that for a reason. And for whatever reason, they've chosen to ignore those rules. I don't get it. I don't understand why they've done it.
Well, part of the reason they said was because obviously Lee's in the top 6. Huddersfield are still a chance of making the finals. So the result actually carried some weight. So if they didn't want to replay it properly, or if they didn't want to abandon it, give both sides a draw.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
No one's got an advantage out of it, and you both still got a point. You're still within the hunt. As it stands, it's probably kind of ended Huddersfield's season. They're now 6 points away from the top 6, and Lee are now 2 wins away from the top of the ladder, and 2 wins clear of they're 3 wins clear of 8th, 9th. So they've pretty much made the finals now. Lee have on the back of this result, and Huddersfield are basically out now because of it. It seems all just a bit nuts, to put it simply.
Yeah, man, you hear some weird stuff out of English Rugby League, don't you? It's so strange.
It feels like when they make these insane decisions like this, it's panic that sets in.
Or like they have a rule book, but somebody can convince them to ignore that.
Like they're treating it like it's a guidebook.
Yeah. It's like dude, no, wait. It's like, you know what it is, and I've been watching a lot of police videos from the US, It's like what the people that try and convince the police that they're wrong, it's like those people, but if they actually did convince the police, it's like, whoa, right, I know it says I was speeding, but you sure your hand wasn't moving on the gun and made it go forward towards my car? And they're like, yeah, you make a good point. Maybe you weren't speeding. It's that sort of shit. Except it works.
Except it worked. That's what I don't get. Look, the other thing that's crazy too, okay, obviously there was
by the
2
way,
days.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, there's 2 days between when the game started and when it resumed.
Yeah.
What if one player got injured either training or just doing something at home and they injured themselves and they couldn't come back onto the field?
That's a good point.
It's no longer the same game, picking up where it was. Someone gets sick. Someone gets COVID. That still happens today. I mean, James Hetfield of Metallica has currently got COVID. He's had to call off concerts. So COVID's still around.
Yeah. I've heard it's only got a survival rate of 99.99% as well.
There you go. The 5G is good. Still is. But that's the big risk when you do this. It's insane.
I can't think of another game. You know what it reminds me of is that F1 race in Canada.
Yeah.
Do you remember the one that's like that? They
delayed by age
it
because of the rain.
Yeah. So I guess that's the longest game of rugby league in the game's history, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I might need to get some stats from you after the podcast for that. I might write about that.
Yeah.
That takes, you know what? That takes over from that game that you and me watched.
It does. God, that game had 50-minute halves.
It fucking kicks its ass.
Minutes. That was insane.
That was so weird.
Yeah, this game went for 3 days.
The weird thing about that game was that, like, it wasn't just like watching the game and being like, I feel like this game's gone a bit long, 10 minutes long. It was like, they've been playing for another 30 minutes, I'm sure. Like, It wasn't a small amount of time.
And no one stopped to ask the referee. Oh, well, we just keep going then.
Yeah, it was very strange.
Oh, it's brilliant footy, Bill.
Yeah.
Anything else we need to throw in?
Not that I can think of. Just the only other thing I can think is just how utterly putrid the journalists were this week. As soon as the finals start, they all start like just doing their regurgitation of shit.
Whinging.
And as you said, I mean, you brought up Andrew Webster before. Like, I think that he goes into that Matt Johns thing of like, if they say something, the opposite's probably the way to go.
Exactly right. Fucking sucks.
Yeah.
It baffles me how they get to the finals and you think everyone would be getting excited and they're getting more and more fucking miserable.
Yeah, and like people fucking let themselves be dragged into it.
I know.
I don't get that.
I know. It's nuts. That's what I thought. That was the driving factor behind me putting up that Dynasty Stats thing. I just wanted to get people talking about football, current and past.
Yeah.
Like, don't get drawn into this shit. And people wanted to debate with me about what a definition of a dynasty was. It's like, why do you distract yourselves with the point that doesn't matter? Like, look at the teams that I've listed in. You can talk about which ones you think are great, where you think they could move to, and which ones should be higher up or whatever. I'm happy for that discussion.
Yeah.
Don't debate with me. Don't try and prove that I'm wrong about something that's subjective.
Yeah. And like there's a laid out statistical base for it.
But that's what modern journalism does to all stories. Instead of actually looking at the actual story, let's whinge about some picky little side issue that's really not that relevant, but we'll make that bit the big part of the story.
Yeah, exactly. I tell you one thing, when I tweeted about like in a month from now, we'll know if the Panthers are one of the best teams of the modern era or like one of the great teams if they can win 3 straight. And I had somebody say, what about the Parramatta Eels? And then they suggested that this Panthers team would smash the Eels with all things being equal. And I said that like I don't like to do that sort of rating because they're completely different eras. I know you know this, but different eras. The 10 metre will come in after the Eels premiership wins, and those guys had jobs. Just that alone, and so I don't like to denigrate one compared to the other. I just because to me these great teams in rugby league history, they're special. I fucking love these teams. I don't want to start dragging them down, and so I just didn't want to rate them against one another. I think you can rate. And that's why I think it's cool that we have both talked about it's much easier to rate after the 10-metre era, not just because of the 10-metre era, but because there's a very big step up in professionalism when the 10-metre era come in. And so it's a bit easier to rate after that. But yeah, I've enjoyed talking about football this week because I'm so fucking excited for the football, and I don't get why anyone would be sitting there miserable about fucking crowds.
They've had all year to whinge about that.
We can't sell the crowds out enough. It's like, fucking shut up.
Because that's the important part.
Honestly.
Oh, they're nuts.
It's going to be like the Panthers will sell out. Shark Park will sell out. They've sold out in Newcastle. And, I mean, if it's not a sellout in Brisbane, I'd be shocked. And it's going to be fucking awesome to see. The crowds this year, did you see the average was like 19,000, the average?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I think the average is up on previous seasons, is it not?
Yeah, it's the highest average of all time.
Yeah. The problem though with that, I'm going to do a journo thing here now.
Okay. Oh, here we go.
Here we go. It's they've also got the Magic Weekend crowds in there. And instead of those crowds being 3 different crowds, they're 8.
Oh, well, that's fucking stupid.
That's part of the reason why in my view, so I'm not saying this is fact, why the English have Magic Weekend is it's a way of inflating their crowd figures as a way to try and get advertising and marketing to the game. You know what? If that works for you, fair enough, so be it. You can make an argument for and against that sort of thing. I don't think the NRL needs to be doing that. But yeah, it's pretty high up. So I think the previous highest average crowd was 17,500 odd. And that would have been the early 2010s, I'm guessing. Because I remember it started to drop down a bit after that.
Yeah.
Not much. Like it came down 1,000 or so per year on average. And that was mainly because we're taking the game to more regional areas and more smaller venues more often instead of just 1 or 2 games a year. It was like 9, 10, 11 games per year. We're starting going to these other regional areas. And then you also had obviously the impacts of COVID, the Broncos turning to shit for a few years.
Yeah. Newcastle not going great.
Exactly. Teams where you'd normally get really big crowds as well, that started to impact pretty heavily there.
Yeah.
And so now we're starting to get a few things coming back into play. And obviously also you got the Dolphins playing in Lang Park as well, Suncorp.
Yep.
That was pushed that up. The Warriors getting good crowds. So there's a lot of good things there. So it'll be interesting to see if they can actually ever get to an average of 20,000. They're not far off.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like the stadium capacities are going to hurt a little bit. Like, I mean, Penrith could probably pretty easily get 25 into their stadium for their bigger matches, but like they're just tapped out at it's like 21,000 and something. Which is unfortunate, and the Sharks with 11, I
was going to say, with the Sharks, if they're smart, right, they'll sell every single person that's got a unit there. Just, you've got a membership, right? We'll just count every single one of you as part of the home crowd figure. Right? Because you can all, by rights, look out your window and watch the game.
Yeah.
So essentially, you're all part of the crowd. Do you have family and friends that live in Australia? We can give them memberships too, and they've contributed to the creation of Your Eyes, so they all count as well. Next thing you know, the show got average home crowd of about 354,000 people per week. Be great.
What would you feel like living over the top of a stadium like that?
I'd hate it.
Why?
Well, I'm not a city person to start with.
Oh, sometimes I forget that. Sorry.
Yeah.
You would fucking hate it. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah.
Because you have the bright lights and the fucking loud noise, and just go, can you all just fuck off? I'm trying to watch the game on TV. I'm used to living hundreds of kilometres away from any football game.
True. Like all these fucking people are getting in the way of me being quietly out here in this cow shed up to my fucking elbow in this cow. All right, it's just annoying.
Right. Yeah, the radio one with some bloke on ABC talking about bushfires halfway through the game of footy.
Or something. What is his name?
Sure, I don't know what his name is. Something like that. I think it's Macca or something. Yeah. Who cares? That and then the Test cricket afterwards over in England.
Yeah,
perfect. Arm up a cow. Where else would you rather be? You can't tell me that's not the best place to be.
Well, I hear that's what they like in Wales. I think that I would personally probably enjoy it if it was my team. But I think the thing that gets you, and I know this because I've lived near Penrith Football Stadium at times, like really close to it. Like it'll be things like there's a game on that you're not going to and you just want to duck into the little shopping centre and get some fucking bread or something, and the car park is absolutely packed and you will not get parking, and you're even going to watch the game like a few streets away and hear the crowd out through the window,
Yeah.
But it's just like, I can't even just go and grab something here, So I would find that there would be times where I'd sort of go the opposite way from the stadium and get a feed at like Red Rooster or something, or the Maccas, not the Panthers Maccas, the other Maccas. But yeah, anyway, this is life stories with LeagueFreak. Really important shit I'm bringing you. My eating habits during Panthers games.
Absolutely.
Can I just say, being there, Nadine invited me, being there to see them win that minor premiership, really special. That was so cool that day.
I mean, is it that special though? I mean, you can just go and see them do it next year.
Well, yeah. I mean, lock us in. Like, look out, St. George, here we come. But yeah, that's. Oh, we didn't talk about Andrew Abdo.
Oh, what's he done?
Did you? You haven't seen this?
No.
So Andrew Abdo, first of all, he took the shield up to Brisbane. Brisbane didn't win it, so he brings it back to Penrith. And like Nadine's looking around for him, and she's like, "He better be here. He better be here. Or I'm going to complain." Right? She sees him in one of the boxes. I don't even know how. Nadine's got an eagle eye, right? So,
well, I mean, she's keen to punch on, and I mean, she's been training for a while.
Violent.
Yeah.
So she sees him, and then so we're having a laugh about him. Anyway, he goes out for the trophy presentation, and he starts his word soup. You know how he's got word soup that he goes to?
Yes.
So he says I'd like to acknowledge about 15 separate times. But it's like, I'd like to acknowledge the Penrith Panthers. I'd like to acknowledge how good they were this year. And then he's like, some really interesting things about this season. The Panthers are the best team in the league in terms of having the possession. They had 3% more than any other team. And he's
done his homework.
Right. He's waiting for the applause or something. I don't know.
Wow, he's done a stat.
I looked at Nadine and I was like, oh, that's cool, And then he goes, and I just want to say that they ran for 45,000 meters. Anyways, for the applause, there's no applause, and people are like, is this guy going to fucking hand over the trophy anytime soon?
Exactly.
And then he says, and I want to some of their players, Dylan Edwards at fullback. Dylan Edwards had 145 assists this year. That's what he said, these words, right?
He's come prepared.
They've got Dylan Edwards on the big screen, and Dylan Edwards is like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? He looked confused.
Is this assist like in the NBA?
Yeah, it's like, what's he talking about? It's like hundreds of assists that he said Dylan Edwards had, which would, I mean, if he did, like Penrith would have scored 10,000 points this year, And he just kept on giving these like completely irrelevant stats. before he handed the trophy over. It was the weirdest thing ever.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, you would have loved it.
Oh, mate, I've got to go find it now. I love stats.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go check them out.
It's honestly, it's going to be one of the underrated post-match things in a game. But it's honestly, it needs its place there in terms of the Optus Vision TV falling apart and Billy Idol telling everyone he loves footy, and that was it.
Fantastic.
Mm.
I've got to check this out.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be great. We should wrap it up on that note. That sounds phenomenal.
Yeah, we did well.
We can't top that.
Nah. For a couple of sovereign citizens, we did good.
We've done our best.
I don't answer questions.
My stats thread feels like absolute fucking shit now in comparison. I just got to delete it all.
You're gonna love this video when we find it. It's so good.
I can't wait. All right, well, you guys can all piss off. I've got to go watch this stats video because this is going to be phenomenal. Thanks for tuning in. Check us out on all the socials, and we will catch us all next time.